Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hello everybody, we're here today to talk about something that also happened in addition to the state's response to Kathleen Zellner and her motion over the Brady violation of the CD. So this is an affidavit from Michael Velie. For those who don't recognize Michael Velie's name, he is the guy who did the forensic analysis of the Dassey computer back in 2006. April and May of 2006, basically. So that's who Michael Velie is. This is his affidavit, and he basically just goes on telling us stuff we already know, that, between April and May of 2006, he was examining this computer. He explains a little bit how he went up through the ranks there and became a captain in 2011. And then, like I said, goes on to explain how he analyzed the thing and whatever. He created 7 DVDs and a CD. All this stuff we basically already know, right, that he did. But the thing that's interesting, because with all this talk that's happening over this CD, and everything that's getting, said, and I was talking to somebody today, a lawyer, who was reminding me how Shakespeare was inspired to say the first thing we do is kill all the lawyers, because a lawyer somehow looks at all this stuff and says, well, but they were given it a month beforehand, and so that means it's okay, and they can just like accept that somehow, like that's okay, and I just can't. The way that the prosecution played this whole thing is they had it in May, the beginning of May. They held on to it for 7 months. Okay, thank you, Paul Capaldi. 7 months they held it, and before they started like kind of turning it over, like piece here, piece there, hidden in, with other things, like for instance, the Fassbender report was in a list of DCI reports that were there was a very long list of DCI reports that it was mixed in with. So none of this stuff is obvious. And when you think about, and what you're going to see here is what was actually, Velie is going to explain to you what was on that CD. And I think it's extreme. I'll put it this way. I understand exactly why Tom Fassbender ended up taking this CD and keeping it in his own personal custody and hoping it never would have to see the light of day. I can understand why, because if the big argument by the state here is they're saying that this CD has no new information that wasn't on the DVDs. Whether that's true or not, the way that the prosecution is handling this, holding on to it for 7 months, and then the way that they were giving it out, and the DVDs actually weren't given to Jerry and Dean. Well, at least they didn't reach Jerry until the 19th or the 20th of December. This is right during the holiday season, right during Christmas and New Year's, and that's when these DVDs were finally handed over 7 months later. So it shows clear intent to hide the information on the CD, and here's why. The only information on the CD titled Dassey Computer Final Report Investigative Copy that is not contained in the 7 DVDs would be the typical administrative and procedural files, folders, and techniques routinely used by a digital forensic examiner during a forensic examination of digital evidence. So, in other words, things and tools that might help somebody look at all the information on a computer and be able to determine if there's anything of interest there. I don't know exactly what all that means, but it sounds like techniques routinely used by digital forensic examiner during forensic examinations. You got to imagine they have some kind of techniques, because think about how difficult it would be to go through an entire computer's files. Some people say, oh, you could just easily search for what? Somebody brings you this computer. This is the Dassey computer. Somebody brings it to you. You're defending your client. what do you do? I mean, first of all, you don't even know if there's anything in that mountain of information. You don't even know if there's anything there you can use. And the only way you can find out is by taking the massive amount of time that it would take to go through it. Or at least you have to pay somebody else or maybe a group of people to go through it so that it gets done quicker. But yeah, whatever the case is that Dean and Jerry should have had more time. But the way this was done, it wasn't turned over 2 months before Denny or 3 months before Denny, so that they would have actually had time to go through it, and then would have said, "Oh wait, Judge, we're still going over the Dassey computer, and we want to ask for an extension on the Denny, or basically, or ask for an extension of some sort." They could have probably done that, but the way that the prosecution played this, they played it in such a way that there was no way that Dean and Jerry were ever going to be able to examine this stuff in time, especially when it's over the holiday season. I mean, this is a clear attempt in my mind by the state to hide and obscure and protect their star witness, in my opinion. But it goes on. The folder titled "Recovered Pornography" on the CD contains images I obtained from the 7 DVDs, and in the context, recovered simply means obtained from the DVDs. Okay, so in other words, if they would have had this CD, they would have had some folders and some programs or whatever that might have helped them figure out how to go about searching a computer to see if there's anything of value there, possibly, right? Okay, so besides that, you mean there would have been a folder on there that would have said "recovered pornography" from the computer, that they would have opened up and went, "Oh wow, that's pretty crazy," and then went to the next one, "Oh wow, that's something to be concerned about," and then go to the next one, "Oh my, that's really out there," and on and on. So in other words, they would have been able to see that instantly, that there was evidence on the computer that was relevant to Denny and being able to make one of the suspects meet the high threshold of Denny. Not only that, they would have known that. They would have, it would have changed the whole face of it. But the way that the prosecution played it is Dean and Jerry didn't even know if there was anything there that they should be making a fuss about, because it was given to them so late. They didn't even know. They certainly didn't have enough time to really go through it and be able to say, look, Judge, we are currently looking at something, and we need a little bit, we need an extension on the Denny deadline, or whatever it might be that they needed to do. The only, if there is a way that they could have introduced this evidence later, and Dean and Jerry just never looked at this, well, then I think we're going to be seriously looking at some I'd have to say severe ineffective assistance of counsel. If they never went over this information and found out what it was, and they could have, if they could have offered Bobby as a suspect that met Denny at a later date, if they had, if they went over this later, say by February or so, they now had looked at all the stuff on the computer, or by the end of January maybe, they had looked at it all more, and they came to the judge saying, look, we think this shows motive, blah 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 blah, right? If they could have done all that and didn't go over this information at all, then I think ineffective assistance of counsel is going to be a huge issue in my mind. I don't exactly know the rules, and I'm going to end up asking some lawyers about this before my next video. But I had one lawyer today alluding to the fact that, like, they could have asked for an extension, but, how did they know if they needed to yet? Like I said, it's a lot of information to go through, and the CD that would have let them know that, number one, there was information there important to their investigation, and number two, that it would have, that it would have, like, pointed them right where they needed to what they needed to know to be able to be able to offer another suspect besides Stephen Avery, and that would have been huge. And trust me, if the jury had known what was on the computer, they would have had a more severe kind of attitude towards Bobby Dassey. Because listen, the only thing they asked for when they were in deliberations was his testimony, and they asked for all of it. They wanted all of it. Like for instance, I mean, to my mind, that means they wanted to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, because I guess maybe some of the people in there just had issues with it. But trust me, if you take that coupled with if they had known about this, what was on the computer, I guarantee you the jury's not putting much stock in anything that Bobby Dassey says. That's just my opinion about it. So the way I see it, we're looking at either Brady violation or we're looking at ineffective assistance of counsel. One of the two. I'd really like it to be Brady, because I really want to see Kratz and the crew get their comeuppance. I really want to see them have to eat crow. But if it turns out that there was something Dean and Jerry could do, then that's when it starts to fall under ineffective assistance of counsel. And so we'll have to see how this all plays out in the end. But wanted to show everybody that, you know, Detective Velie telling us exactly what was there, and obviously how that would have told Dean and Jerry right then and there that they needed, that there was information on that computer, and it that it was not void of anything of evidentiary value, as Kratz said. Anyways, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you, folks.